Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma and with me is Renuka RS bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails India's achievement of $400 billion exports in his Mann Ki Baat program, urges people to make the local global and enhance prestige of Indian products. New Delhi reiterates that its partnership with Maldives is of great consequence and a real force of stability and prosperity for the Indian Ocean region. India's DRDO successfully flight tests Army's medium-range surface-to-air missile. U.S. Secretary of State says that the U.S. has no plan of regime change in Russia. Information and Broadcasting Minister of India Anurag Singh Thakur launches training for Emirates Jobs and Skills at the Dubai Expo in the UAE. The 94th Academy Awards to be presented at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles. The Oscar ceremony begins at 5:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time on Monday. In Swiss Open Badminton, PV Sindhu wins women's singles title, beating Thailand's Busanan Ongbamrungpa in the final at Basel. And Delhi Capitals beat Mumbai Indians by 4 wickets in IPL cricket. Another match underway between Punjab Kings and Royal Challengers Bangalore in Mumbai.
As we begin the bulletin, we appeal to our listeners to stay safe from COVID-19 by following these 4 simple steps. Get fully vaccinated, wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene, and now the news in detail.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday exuded pride that India has achieved the export target of $400 billion. Addressing the people through his Mann Ki Baat program on All India Radio, Mr. Modi said that Made in India products are now reaching new markets in every corner of the world. He pointed out that when Indians become vocal for local, the local becomes global. He asked people to make the local global and augment the prestige of Indian products further. The Prime Minister said that the demand for items made in India is increasing all over the world. He said it also signifies that the supply chain of India is getting stronger.
भारत से एक्सपोर्ट का आंकड़ा $400 बिलियन पर पहुंच गया है। देश विराट कदम तब उठाता है जब सपनों से बड़े संकल्प होते हैं, जब संकल्पों के लिए दिन रात ईमानदारी से प्रयास होता है तो वो संकल्प सिद्ध भी होते हैं। और आप देखिए, देश के कोने कोने से नए नए प्रोडक्ट जब विदेश जा रहे हैं, असम के हैलाकांडी के लेदर प्रोडक्ट हो या उस्मानाबाद के हैंडलूम प्रोडक्ट, बीजापुर की फल सब्जियां हो और चंदौली का ब्लैक राइस, सबका एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ रहा है। अब आपको लद्दाख की विश्व प्रसिद्ध एप्रिकॉट दुबई में भी मिलेगी और सऊदी अरब में तमिलनाडु से भेजे गए केले मिलेंगे। और सबसे बड़ी बात ये कि नए नए प्रोडक्ट्स नए नए देशों को भेजे जा रहे हैं।
The Prime Minister stated that Made in India products are now more visible than ever before in foreign countries. He said the potential of India in this field is great and farmers, artisans, weavers, engineers, small entrepreneurs and the MSME sector are the true strength. Mr. Modi said that World Health Day will be celebrated on the 7th of April. He emphasized that the collective Indian thought on health, whether it's yoga or Ayurveda, is increasingly trending all over the world as a yoga program in Qatar attracted participants from 114 countries.
पिछले ही सप्ताह कतर में एक योग कार्यक्रम का आयोजन किया गया। इसमें 114 देशों के नागरिकों ने हिस्सा लेकर एक नया वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड बना दिया। इसी तरह से आयुष इंडस्ट्री का बाजार भी लगातार बड़ा हो रहा है। 6 साल पहले आयुर्वेद से जुड़ी दवाइयों का बाजार 22,000 करोड़ रुपए के आसपास का था। आज आयुष मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडस्ट्री 1,40,000 करोड़ रुपए के आसपास पहुंच रही है। यानी इस क्षेत्र में संभावनाएं लगातार बढ़ रही हैं।
India has said that its partnership with the Maldives is of great consequence and a real source of stability and prosperity for the Indian Ocean region. Speaking at inauguration of the National College for Policing and Law Enforcement in Mali on Sunday, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said defense cooperation is another key pillar of the partnership. Lauding Maldives' policy of India First and India's policy of Neighbourhood First, the minister said, in recent times, under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Ibrahim Mohammed Solih, the India-Maldives partnership has achieved momentum and indeed dynamism on an unprecedented scale. Dr. Jaishankar highlighted people-to-people ties between the two countries as India was among the top sources of tourists for Maldives in 2020 and 2021, helped by the air bubble arrangement.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on the External Affairs Minister's visit to Maldives and Sri Lanka. In conversation are Skand Ranjan Tayal, a former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, a journalist.
Today we are discussing India's relations with Maldives and Sri Lanka, and we have our External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, who is currently in Maldives. He will also be travelling to Sri Lanka to attend the Foreign Ministers' BIMSTEC meet. Ambassador Payal, when you see this very important visit of the External Affairs Minister to both the Maldives and Sri Lanka, how do you look at this as an outreach by India to its neighbours and an extension of the Neighbourhood First policy also?
We have seen in recent years a very regular and very frequent change of views, dialogue and discussion between India and its neighbors as per our Neighbourhood First policy. And in this context, two countries in the Indian Ocean, Maldives and Sri Lanka, are extremely important from the strategic point of view as well as from economic point of view. And Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar's visit to Maldives yesterday and today, and from tomorrow to Sri Lanka, assumes a lot of importance. If we look at security scenario, the attempt by India is to try to convince Maldives, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, Seychelles, etc., that Indian Ocean is very peaceful. It is a very tranquil region and no external power should be allowed to make any disturbance. And in that, the message has been that let us all come together and have collective security. So we saw just a few days back, there was a Colombo security conclave in Maldives where NSAs of India, Maldives, Sri Lanka had come, and along with observers, Bangladesh and Seychelles. So if we look at Maldives, the attempt is to reinforce the strategic relationship as well as economic partnership with Maldives.
Ambassador Payal, when we also look at India's relationship with the Maldives of late, we also consider another factor, and that is the attempt by China to increase its influence in the Maldives. How do you feel that India going forward has to counter this one effect which we see happening in the island nation?
This is certainly a source of concern to India. Since the Maldives became independent, the relations with India have been very, very close, very, very friendly. We remember in the 80s there was a coup attempt in Maldives, and that was resolved with a very quick intervention by Indian forces. And we have also seen that when former President Abdullah Yamin's term was there for about 5 years, he had adopted a policy which was inimical to India's interests. And at that time, China wanted to make inroads in the Maldives polity as well as economy. And it was a difficult time for India's diplomacy vis-a-vis Maldives. But after the 2017 elections, when President Ibrahim Solih came to power, again that stability and friendship has been restored. But former President Abdullah Yamin has now been released from prison, and his party has been mounting an anti-India campaign and also alleging that Indian armed forces have some presence in Maldives, which is an absolute falsehood. So in any democratic country, there is always a possibility that opposition forces could come back to power. So India has to be very visible in Maldives as a development partner, as a partner for peace and a partner for stability. So during this 2-day visit, Foreign Minister Jaishankar has opened one police training academy jointly with the Maldives president, a drug rehabilitation center. There is a assurance to have an Indian consulate in island Adu, eco-tourism zones because the Maldivian economy very greatly rests on tourism. And again, also a very major project is being unfolded, which is a $500 billion project for Greater Malay Connectivity Project, it is called. So India is a very strong partner for Maldives to finance and execute projects as per the wishes of the people of Maldives, as per the government of Maldives, and that is a continuous process. And Foreign Minister Jaishankar's visit reinforces the journey in that direction.
Mr. Tayal, we also see that Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar will be traveling to Sri Lanka, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be attending a virtual summit of the seven-nation BIMSTEC grouping on March 30th. The summit is being hosted by Sri Lanka in its capacity as the chair of the BIMSTEC, and this will be a virtual meeting which will be hosted by Sri Lanka. How do you see BIMSTEC evolving with time, especially since we have seen that SARC, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, primarily because of the role played by Pakistan, we find that SARC has not really been able to move forward. And do you feel that BIMSTEC today has emerged as a stronger organization for regional cooperation, especially when we see that SARC is going down? So BIMSTEC is actually coming up, and it's a big positive for the region as a whole.
Very much so. Pakistan was always impediment in the cohesion of SARC, and now Afghanistan also falling in the hands of Taliban, it becomes very difficult for SARC to move forward. In that context, for several years, Government of India has been trying to shift attention for regional cooperation to BIMSTEC and make BIMSTEC central organization, the core organization for regional cooperation. And it has been working well. A secretariat has been established in Dhaka, so there is institutional structures. But with the coup in Myanmar, again, there is a bit of a dissonance in BIMSTEC because the other members are not very comfortable with Myanmar. Thailand also has a regime which is really not very democratic. So BIMSTEC leaders will need to assess the situation, whether and how to pursue economic projects, connectivity projects, transportation projects, which bring the region closer economically and trade-wise.
How do you see BIMSTEC leaders coming together, especially when we've seen, as the statement also points out, the challenges which have been thrown open by the COVID pandemic?
It is important that the BIMSTEC countries come together and try to formulate a common policy, that the countries assist each other. If one country becomes more afflicted by the COVID virus, by way of very quick supply of vaccines, medicines, PPE equipment, etc. That is one part which is directly combating the COVID virus by working together. And the second part is that the adverse effect of COVID virus on the economies of the member countries and on supply chains, how that can be addressed. I believe both these will be core agenda item in the meeting at the summit level on 30 March and meeting at the minister level on 29 March.
Mr. Tayal, how do you see the India-Sri Lanka relationship as we go forward? We have also seen that the fisherman issue comes up very often. There have been other strains, and a similar strain to the Maldives has of course been the Chinese effort to get a bigger foothold in Sri Lanka. How do you see India and Sri Lanka forging a stronger relationship despite these strains as we move forward?
Yes, certainly with the Rajapaksa administration, India had some differences of perception as well as of execution, particularly regarding China, and also on the rehabilitation of Tamils, of the fulfilling of promises which were made to Sri Lankan Tamils by way of constitution amendments and which have not been fully implemented by the government of Sri Lanka, as well as the fisherman issue. But the fisherman issue and the Sri Lankan Tamil issues are old problems, and these are being managed reasonably well. But recently one also saw that some refugees from Sri Lanka came by boat to India, to Tamil Nadu, because of economic stress. So that should not be allowed to become another issue. India, of course, has tried to help Sri Lanka much more than our capacity in overcoming their economic crisis. Sri Lanka is going through a very major economic crisis because of the balance of payments problems, because of shortage of foreign exchange. Just a week back, $1 billion credit facility was extended by India when the Sri Lankan Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa was here. And till now, from January, in just 3 months, almost $2.4 billion worth of Indian assistance has been promised to Sri Lanka, and much of it has already been sent there. But how long can that continue? And Sri Lanka has to put its own economy in order and get perhaps loans from IMF and other countries. That will also be discussed between Foreign Minister Sri S. Jaishankar and the Sri Lankan authorities.
With these comments, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
India's Defence Research and Development Organization DRDO on Sunday conducted 2 successful flight tests of medium-range surface-to-air missile MRSAM at the Integrated Test Range Chandipur off the coast of Odisha. The flight tests were carried out as part of the live firing trials against high-speed aerial targets. The missiles intercepted the aerial targets and destroyed them completely, registering direct hits at both the ranges. The first launch was to intercept a medium-altitude long-range target, and second launch was for proving the capability of a low-altitude short-range target. The MRSAM version is a surface-to-air missile developed jointly by the DRDO and Israel Aerospace Industries IAI Israel for use by the Indian Army. The MRSAM Army weapon system comprises multifunction radar, mobile launcher system and other vehicles. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has congratulated the DRDO, the Indian Army and the industry for the successful flight tests of MRSAM Army.
India resumed scheduled international commercial flights on Saturday night after over 2 years of the pandemic-induced ban on air travel. New Delhi has announced several relaxations to the existing COVID-19 protocol that have come into effect at airports and flights. According to the new rules announced by the Civil Aviation Ministry, the cabin crew members will no longer be needed to wear personal protective equipment, PPE kits, and the security personnel at airports are allowed to resume pat-down search of passengers wherever needed. The airlines are directed to leave 3 seats vacant on international flights for medical emergencies and in order to facilitate a smooth conduct of air operations. Wearing protective face masks and maintenance of hand hygiene is still mandatory at airports and on flights.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has denied that the United States has any plans to bring about regime change in Russia or anywhere else. Mr. Blinken's comments come a day after President Joe Biden said that his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin should not be allowed to remain in power. Mr. Biden made the unscripted remark at the end of a speech in Poland. Mr. Blinken said that the U.S. President simply made the point that Mr. Putin could not be allowed to wage a war against Ukraine. The Kremlin dismissed Mr. Biden's remark, saying it was for Russians to choose their leader. During a visit to Israel, Mr. Blinken said on Sunday that he thinks that the President and the White House made the point quite simply that President Putin cannot be empowered to wage a war or engage in aggression against Ukraine or anyone else.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Sunday tried to soothe the fears of Israel and its Gulf Arab allies ahead of the possible renewal of global powers' international nuclear deal with Iran. Mr. Blinken made the comments shortly before joining his counterparts from Israel and 4 Arab countries at a special gathering where the Iranian nuclear deal was expected to top the agenda. Israel and many of its neighbors are fiercely opposed to the deal, which they believe will embolden and enrich Iran. Along with Israel's Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, Mr. Blinken told reporters at a news conference that both of them are committed and determined that Iran will never acquire a nuclear weapon. The Biden administration has been working to renew the 2015 nuclear deal, which placed curbs on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for billions of dollars in sanctions relief. With support from Israel, the Trump administration withdrew from the deal in 2018, causing it to unravel. The 2-day gathering is set to begin later Sunday at a kibbutz in the Negev desert. In addition to Blinken and Lapid, their counterparts from Bahrain, Morocco, and the United Arab Emirates and Egypt will attend.
In a setback to Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan, a cabinet member belonging to the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf PTI's ally, Jamhuri Watan Party, has resigned a day before the no-confidence vote. Shahzain Bukti, who was serving as a special assistant to the Prime Minister on harmony and reconciliation in Balochistan, has resigned and joined the Pakistan Democratic Movement, a political front opposing the Imran Khan regime. Shahzain Bukti is the grandson of Akbar Bukti, a prominent leader of the Baloch movement who was killed by the Pakistan Army in 2006 in Balochistan's Kohlu town.
Information and Broadcasting Minister of India Anurag Singh Thakur on Sunday launched Tejas, or Training for Emirates Jobs and Skills, at Dubai Expo in United Arab Emirates. In his address, Mr. Thakur said this project is aimed at skilling, certification and overseas employment of Indians. He said that India has a youthful population and the government's focus is on to skill the population and provide the world with a large skilled workforce from India. He said that Tejas aims at creating a 10,000-strong Indian workforce in the United Arab Emirates during the initial phase. Mr. Thakur held a discussion with the Minister of State for International Cooperation in the government of UAE, Ms. Reem Al-Hashimi. He also held a series of discussions on investment opportunities with industry leaders from film and entertainment space in India and UAE.
The 94th Academy Awards will be held at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles on Monday at 5:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. For the first time in 2 years, the Academy Awards are rolling out the red carpet. An hour before the broadcast begins, attendees will assemble in the Dolby for the presentation of 8 awards and acceptance speeches. We have a report.
The Academy Awards are honoring the films released between January 1 and December 31, 2021. The nominations were announced on February 8 by actors Tracy Ellis Ross and Leslie Jordan. The top 5 nominees for the award in the Best Actor category include British actor Benedict Cumberbatch, American actors Will Smith and Denzel Washington, Spanish actor Javier Bardem, and Andrew Garfield. Some notable and significant nominations for this year include Troy Kotsur, who is the first deaf actor to be nominated in the Best Supporting Actor category for the film Coda. Denzel Washington's nomination for The Tragedy of Macbeth marks his 10th Oscar nod, the most for any black actor, while Jane Campion becomes the first woman to be nominated for the Best Director twice. Belfast, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, Dune, Coda, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, The Power of the Dog, Nightmare Alley, West Side Story are the films nominated for the Best Film category. Kenneth Branagh, Paul Thomas Anderson, Ryusuke Hamaguchi, Jane Campion and Steven Spielberg are nominated in the Best Director category. Meanwhile, Indian Documentary Writing with Fire has been nominated for the Best Documentary. It has been directed by Rintu Thomas and Sushmit Ghosh. It is the first Indian feature documentary that was shortlisted for the Academy Award and has managed to secure a nomination. Anita Anand for World News All India Radio.
In Swiss Open Badminton Championships 2022, two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu has won the women's single title, beating Thailand's Busnan Ongbam-Rungpa 21-16 and 21-18 in straight games at Basel and Sunday. With this win, the ace Indian shuttler notched up her second women's single title of the season. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated PV Sindhu on winning the Swiss Open. In a tweet, Mr. Modi said her accomplishments inspire the youth of the country. In another match, Pranoy H.S. lost to Indonesian Jonathan Christie 12-21 and 18-21 in the men's single title clash.
In the IPL cricket, chasing a target of 206 runs, Punjab Kings were 148 for 4 in 14.2 overs against the Royal Challengers Bangalore at the D.Y. Patil Stadium in Mumbai when reports last came in. Batting first, the Royal Challengers Bangalore scored 205 runs for the loss of 2 wickets in the stipulated 20 overs with the help of 88 by Faf du Plessis of 57 balls and 41 not out by Virat Kohli. For Punjab Kings, Arshdeep Singh and Rahul Chahar picked up 1 wicket each. Earlier, the Punjab captain Mayank Agarwal won the toss and elected to field first. In the other IPL match, Delhi Capitals beat Mumbai Indians by 4 wickets at the Brabant Stadium in Mumbai. Asked to bat, Mumbai set a victory target of 178 runs, but Delhi chased the target comfortably with 10 balls remaining. Delhi overhauled the target, scoring 179 for the loss of 6 wickets. Delhi Capitals spinner Kuldeep Yadav was declared the player of the match for his 3 crucial wickets for 18 runs in 4 overs. Mumbai Indians had scored 177 runs for the loss of 5 wickets in the stipulated 20 overs.
In the ICC Women's World Cup, South Africa defeated India by 3 wickets at the Hagley Oval. South Africa reached the target of 275 runs in the last ball of the last over in a nail-biting match. This was India's final group stage match. South Africa has already secured a place in the semi-finals.
And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Let us take a look at the press reports on China. News 18 writes that Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit was just a strategic pause in Beijing's campaign of aggression. ANI, citing a policy research group report, writes that Wang Yi's forced visit to New Delhi was meant to ease ties ahead of the BRICS summit.
Now let's have a look at what made headlines in Nepal. Most prominent Nepalese and Indian publications reported on the upcoming visit of Nepal's Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba to India. PTI reports from Kathmandu that Nepalese Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba will pay a 3-day visit to India from 1st of April to inject a new momentum in bilateral ties, especially in areas of trade, investment, healthcare and connectivity, people familiar with the development said on Saturday.
Let us have some brief news from Afghanistan. Khama Press reports that the United Nations World Food Programme has said that they keep providing food for people in Afghanistan, but lack of funds is threatening their operations in the country.
Now let's have a look at what made headlines in Bangladesh. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has said that her government is working to build Bangladesh as a non-communal country free from hunger and poverty, imbued with the spirit of the Liberation War, reports BSS.
And before we end, let us take a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails India's achievement of $400 billion exports in his Mann Ki Baat program, urges people to make the local global and enhance prestige of Indian products. New Delhi reiterates that its partnership with Maldives is of great consequence and a real force of stability and prosperity for the Indian Ocean region. India's DRDO successfully flight tests Army's medium-range surface-to-air missile. U.S. Secretary of State says that the U.S. has no plan of regime change in Russia. Information and Broadcasting Minister of India Anurag Singh Thakur launches training for Emirates Jobs and Skills at the Dubai Expo in the UAE. The 94th Academy Awards to be presented at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles. The Oscar ceremony begins at 5:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time on Monday. In Swiss Open Badminton, PV Sindhu wins women's singles title, beating Thailand's Busanan Ongbamrungpa in the final at Basel. And Delhi Capitals beat Mumbai Indians by 4 wickets in IPL cricket, another match underway between Punjab Kings and Royal Challengers Bangalore in Mumbai.
And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnavajan, by artists from United Kingdom.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.
ये आकाशवाणी है। अब आप रत्ना पांडे से समाचार सुनिए।